Grade? Horse and His Boy. So I said this in the packet if you read it. This is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, of any of the Narnia series, which is rather an unpopular opinion because for some reason a lot of people do not actually like this as much as some of the other ones. I don't know why. It's fantastic. Probably because it's set not all actually in Narnia. We don't start in Narnia. And you'll notice this. It also gives you a fun handy dandy map at the very front of the book. This will be very helpful. In this, it does not actually show you where the story starts, but it shows you where the majority of it takes place. Cashban, which is the capital, down here. This finger. Tashban right there, the tombs, which will be important, and then it shows you the arrows, the rock, and then a gorge and the passage into Narnia and Archenland. So that will be very useful. Pay attention to that when we get there. Okay. Now, first, this starts out with a character named Shasta. And Shasta lives in Calormen. And Calormen is actually kind of funny. C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien both were lovers of language. They loved everything about language. Anything they could get their hands on, they adored. Calor means hot. So literally, this is the place where it's hot and men live there. Calormen. Calor. So literally, it's really hot and it's all desert, which is just a fun little thing that he throws in there that I quite enjoy, just being, very nerdy about such things myself. I find it absolutely hysterical that he literally calls a place hot because it's hot there. So anyways, there's a boy and his, there's a man named Arshish, and the boy called him father, and the boy's name is Shasta. And so this is very much kind of Eastern theology, is a lot of this at the very beginning with Shasta and Arshish, and then we have the Tarkan, and they talk very formally, "Oh my host," and all such things, and "oh my master," and "oh my host," and "oh my son." They're just very, very formal in this way. And I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't done the reading yet. If you haven't done the reading yet, pause. Pause now. Ba-ding! Okay, great. If you have done the reading, we'll proceed. If you have not, you should have already paused this. Go and finish the reading, and then we'll go through it. This is going to be my summary of the first few chapters, so pause me right now. Bing! Okay, for everyone else, moving on. So they're going through this, and Shasta goes out and he's overhearing some of the conversation. Tut tut, Shasta, don't listen at doors. But he never learned better. And then as he's going out, he finds out something very interesting about the horse, and that is that the horse talks. So he starts wondering to himself the reason the horse speaks. Page 9, because everyone has the same book. I don't have to put 2 page numbers. Everyone has the same type. Yay. He's saying, well, I wonder what sort of a man the Tarkan is, he said out loud. It would be splendid if he was kind. Some of the slaves in great lords' houses have next to nothing to do. They wear lovely clothes and eat meat every day. Perhaps he'd take me to the wars and I'd save his life in a battle, and then he'd set me free and adopt me as his son, and give me a palace and a chariot and a suit of armor. But then he might be a horrid, cruel man. He might send me to work in fields in chains. I wish I knew. How can I know? I bet this horse knows, if only he could tell me. The horse had lifted his head. Shasta stroked his smooth as satin nose and said, I wish you could talk, old fellow. And then for a second he thought he was dreaming, for quite distinctly, though in a low voice, the horse said, But I can. Shasta stared into its great eyes, and his own grew almost as big with astonishment. However did you learn to talk? He asked. Hush, not so loud, replied the horse. Where I come from, nearly all animals talk. Wherever is that? Narnia, said the horse. The happy land of Narnia. Narnia of the heathery mountains and the thymy downs. Narnia of the many rivers, the plashing glens, the mossy caverns and the deep forests ringing with hammers of dwarves. Ah, the sweet air of Narnia. An hour's life there is better than 1,000 years in Calormen. It ended with a whinny that sounded very much like a sigh. So then he finds out that the horse came there and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, my favorite part, and I insist every year on reading this out loud to the students, which is when they're about to leave, and they're switching names. Now, I have a story I tell every single year. The first time I ever read this book, I was in second grade. And at that time, my family had boarders who all were going to the college in town. So, boarding students was where a family would have rooms available and a college student could rent out the rooms and live there for the year. So, we had female boarding students who all lived in our basement, and we normally had between 2 and 3. And there was one year we had a boarding student who was named Patty Tanner. I remember this. And I was at the kitchen table, and every single morning I would come downstairs because Mrs. Straka, as you know, is very bookish. I would always come downstairs with whatever book I was reading, and I would read my book while I ate my breakfast. And Patty, when she lived there, every single time she came upstairs from the basement to come make her breakfast, if she found me reading, she would take the book out of my hand and then say, "What page?" And I would say, "Oh, page 16, second paragraph." And she would start reading, and she had wonderful voices. She was the one who made me want to get good at reading out loud, because I would hear Patty read and it was just amazing. She brought everything to life. And so I will never forget, ever, the first time I was reading this in second grade, and I was 7 at the time. I was 7 at the time, and I was reading this, and I was in this first chapter, and she pulled the book out of my hand, and she said, "Where are you?" And I said, "Top of page 17. So she started reading, and I will do my best to imitate the way she did it, but I can't quite do her justice, because she was wonderful. "I say," observed the horse, what a place for a gallop, eh?" "Oh, don't let's," said Shasta. "Not yet. I don't know how to. Please, horse, I don't know your name." "Bricky, hinny, brinny, hooey, haw," said the horse. "I'll never be able to say that," said Shasta. "Can I call you Bree?" "Well, if it's the best you can do, I suppose you must," said the horse. "And what shall I call you?" "I'm Shasta." Said Bree. "Well, now there's a name that's really hard to pronounce. But now about this gallop. It's a good deal easier than in trotting, if only you knew, because you don't have to rise up and fall. Grip with your knees and keep your eyes straight between my ears. Don't look at the ground. If you think you're going to fall, just grip harder and sit up straighter. Ready? Now, for Narnia and the North." I memorized Bree's name when I was a child because I could not get out of my head the way she said it. Bricky, hinny, brinny, hooey, haw. So, anyways, I absolutely love reading that. It makes me happy every single time. Yay for Patty Tanner. There you go. Okay, so that was just chapter 1. So anyways, back to I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry. Back to sort of what I was trying to preempt this with. All of the C.S. Lewis books are based off of a portion in the Bible, and all of the books, if you didn't read my note that I put at the front of your packet, all of the books are based off of a portion of the Bible, but every single one of them is showing the history of God redeeming his people, first with Israel, and then through Jesus, and then to the Gentiles as well. This book is focused on Exodus and Deuteronomy, essentially, and it has a few little call-outs to what am I thinking? It has a few call-outs to Ruth and a few of the other Old Testament books, but this is all Old Testament is going to be in here, and he directly quotes Old Testament a few times, which is quite fantastic. So the first things first, you should have noticed almost immediately a reference to Moses, mayhaps. Any references you find, I highly recommend that you get a sticky note. In fact, for some of you lucky 5th graders, you might have found a sticky note already in your book from last year's students. If you have those, lucky you. If you do not have one, I passed out the books randomly, so I wasn't trying to give it to certain people and not to others. Just don't even think that. But I recommend getting a sticky note, and anytime you see symbolism that is coming from the Old Testament, I highly recommend you write it down and just have the sticky note as your bookmark, or just stick it in the front, on your cover, something, so that you can keep track of those. They will be helpful for the final. But anyways, you should have already noticed a reference to Moses from how Shasta was found by his father. If you didn't notice, that was definitely a Moses reference. Should have noticed that one. Okay, then, let's see, moving on. We do learn something very interesting about Bree. Bree is incredibly self-conscious and, shall we border on saying, prideful? You can notice this very easily when you're on page 22, chapter 2, bing, when he's rolling around on his back, and Shasta burst out laughing and said, "You do look funny when you're on your back." "I look nothing of the sort," said Bree. But suddenly he rolled around on his side, raised his head, and looked hard at Shasta, blowing a little. "Does it really look funny?" he asked in an anxious voice. "Yes, it does," replied Shasta. "But what does it matter?" "You don't think, do you," said Bree, "that it might be a thing talking horses never do? A silly clownish trick I've learned from the dumb ones? It would be dreadful to find when I get back to Narnia that I've picked up a lot of low, bad habits. What do you think, Shasta? Honestly now, don't spare my feelings. Should you think real free horses, the talking kind, do roll?" "Well, how should I know? Anyway, I don't think you should bother about it if I were you. You've got to get there first. Do you know the way?" "Well, I know my way to Tashban. After that comes the desert." So anyways, they keep going. But you'll notice there a streak of pride and very much wanting to always appear very decent, like, very, well, I don't want to say decent, that's not the right word, but very dignified. There we go. That's what I was going for. He always wants to look very dignified and very correct at all times, and he's prideful about this. And we notice this even more when we meet the other horse who also talks, and the Tarkina. And with the other horse, he tends to say, like, "Well, yes, I was in the wars. I was a very dignified horse. Ba 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 ba." And he seems to almost put her down a little bit. Hwin, which is the other horse. I love her name, Hwin. And so he almost seems to put her down, which is quite rude. Aravis, we meet, who is the Tarkina. She's the daughter of Kidrash Tarkan, son of Rishti Tarkan, son of Kidrash Tarkan, son of Ilsombre Tisroc, son of Ardib Tisroc, who was descended from the right line of the god Tash. So you'll notice this in Calormen. They have a different god named Tash. And a very interesting thing we find with Tash, so they say that the Tisrocs, which is the leaders, are descended from Tash, and anytime they say Tisroc, may he live forever, they add that to the end. And immediately Bree calls Shasta out on it, and Shasta, "I say, shouldn't you say may he live forever after it?" "No, that's fools and slaves talk. He's not going to live forever, whether I want him to or not." And he's just very clever about all that, and it's quite fun. So anyways, she tells the story of what was going to happen to her. She was going to have to get married, so she makes up this story about how she wants to go into the mountains and, like, make sacrifices to the gods, blah blah blah. And then she runs away from home and from Azimbalda, which is the name of her home, and they've been sleeping on the road, coming through, and they're trying to also get to Narnia because Hwin has been wanting to go to Narnia as well. Because when she was in the mountains, she was going to kill herself so she didn't have to get married to this weird old guy, and then Hwin's like, no, don't do that, that's a bad idea, and so she makes her not do that. Okay, and the last thing that we hear about them is that they are planning on heading into Tashban. And Tashban is a very cool looking city. Chapter 4. This is actually based off of a city in France. And for those of you who have seen Disney, the city in France is also the basis for the capital city in Tangled. You'll notice it's the on the water with the dome shape. So bonus points to anyone who can actually find out the name of that city. If you go and you're able to find it. It's in France, I'll tell you that, but I will tell you nothing else. If you can find it, I will give you bonus points. So there you go. Because that is based on a real place. The look of it, at least, the artist was basing it on this one area in France. So that is it for the beginning. Please keep your eye out for those references. You're going to find them a lot, and you're also going to meet some very familiar people in the upcoming chapters. For any of you who were in 3rd grade and read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with Mrs. Fisher, you will find some very familiar people here, because this is taking place... Oh, well, I should have told you that. I'm sorry. This is set when Peter, Edmund, Lucy, and Susan are kings and queens in Narnia. They are adults. They have not gone back to England yet, but they're getting closer to that. So they're grown up, like in their 20s-ish, in Narnia, but, they're going to go back to England and be kids again. But it's set in that that time period when they are kings and queens ruling. So just to give you perspective on where we're at, because you're going to meet some very familiar people, and it would be helpful if you know that that's what's happening. Okay, wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed the reading from this week, and the worksheet. Please make sure you're turning that in. Anything else I wanted to say about that? No, I think that's it. So, I hope you guys enjoy. I am posting videos now on the YouTube where this is also found for a read aloud book. I am reading aloud, there it is, Tale of Despero as our read aloud book. I read the first 7 chapters, which sounds like a lot. It was actually only about 20 minutes, and it was 20 pages, give or take a little bit. So anyways, I'm going to be uploading that if you want to keep listening to me read aloud, if for some reason you enjoy that. Well, I don't know, maybe you do. But that's going to be up on the YouTube as well. I'm not going to be posting it on Jupiter, but it is on YouTube if you do want to listen to that. So there you go. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I miss you all very much.